Hi, everybody. This is Scott from CNJ RIG, and today we have Investors First Title that we're going to have a conversation with about what they do and how they can help members of the group.
Yep, yeah, I like them.
And
So
so we have
We
Jeannie
like
and
you
Ken.
too.
Or Ken and Jeannie.
Ken and Jeannie, Jeannie and Ken. So tell us a little bit about how you got started into the title business.
Well, again, a quick intro. I'll introduce myself again. I'm Ken, and this is my wife Jeannie, Investors First Title. Myself, as far as my own experience with title insurance, I broke into it, well, giving away my age, probably about 33 years ago. And as you can do the math, everybody knows how old I am. Anyway, yeah, I broke into it straight out of college. I got into title insurance, title searching in the courthouses, spending my time, doing title searches and getting acclimated. And then eventually, I went through the trials and tribulations of the industry. I've seen the ups and downs in real estate in general. And one thing that I always saw a consistency in, after being in the industry for a number of years is, you have to try to find your niche, and you have to be able to offer something different than a lot of different title companies do. And I found my niche in the investor field, investors buying properties and whatnot, because one thing I know is that when investors typically they try to find a property in distress or an owner in distress. And one thing I've learned is if a property is in distress, that means the title is in distress. And a lot of companies don't like to take the time to resolve some different issues that come up when you have those kinds of properties. So that being said, I opened up my own company about 10 years ago, and hence the name Investors First Title. So Investors First. So I found that to be my niche, and that helped me pay the bills.
Awesome.
Great. That's a great way to find a new company.
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And they do all title, not just investors. But he is such an expert. I hear him on the phone answering questions, and it's very impressive. Like his wealth of knowledge for title is very impressive.
Well, and don't get me wrong, for those of you out there who have a nice vanilla transaction, I certainly I love it when I get those kind of transactions, and I don't really have to use too many brain cells. It's easier.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, it's when it comes to investing, there's all different kinds of transactions. It's never straightforward, so it's always good to have somebody that knows the investor side of things when it comes to title, because we run into issues from time to time. And some investors, some title agents aren't really equipped to handle the situation. It's like we go to them and say, yeah, we do it, and then they get it and they're like, what is this? And they it's a learning curve for them, so they got to learn how to handle the closing, and then it puts it down the road a little bit because of complications. So it's always
right. I get asked so sometimes too, like, well, why is title insurance necessary? Particularly to investors, and I'll just give you a typical transaction or a typical situation that I ran into maybe about 2 or 3 years ago. Now, I know a lot of investors go after probate transactions, estates, properties coming out of the states, right? Where you're dealing with an executor or an administrator of the estate who's selling the property, and there might be a bunch of different heirs, beneficiaries to the estate. Well, as it turned out, in this case, I was presented with the contract, and coming out of the the executor signed off onto the contract, and then after doing the search work and going to the probate court and making sure that the executor is actually qualified to handle the matters of the estate, we had seen and everything was pretty much as it should, until we discovered that one of the beneficiaries challenged the estate, challenged the executorship. As it turns out, one of the executor, who happened to be one of the beneficiaries, just assigned a deed into herself and said, the property's mine now, and I'm going to sell the property and get all the proceeds. And and again, like, unless you know to look for some of these things, sometimes you can run into some serious headaches.
That,
Yeah.
actually, that is just,
Yeah.
talk about a headache. So, I'm sorry, I just want to ask because we have a situation that I know of that the people that own the house, both of them passed away. It was a mother and son that owned it, and they both passed away. And their relatives that are alive are in Poland. They're in another country. So how would that work
Yeah,
for a title that's here and there's nobody here and there's no will?
there's
Well,
no.
there's no will. So in that case, they would assign when there's a will, they issue letters of testamentary and they have an executor, and then hence the name. They're executing the terms of the will, executor. When there is no executor, they have to go to probate court and try to get letters of administration. In other words, somebody's coming in, they're going to administer the estate, and
Right.
and the administrator's job is to get in touch with all the would-be beneficiaries and so on, and take care of the residual estate. So basically, it sounds like, well, I mean, I'm not, again, I haven't done your search, but I'm who died first, who died second, and I mean, if you have a mother and a son, the mother died without a will. I'm assuming
Both.
They
And
both.
they're
both
both
died without a
on the
will
house.
at two
One
separate
died in
times.
the morning, one died that night.
Oh
Wow.
boy, okay.
Yep.
So in that case, they have to get an administrator to handle both, and you could probably do it, in one swipe, basically. The same person will handle both, and they'll act as administrator, and then the funds will go into, the funds will go into an account for the residual estate, and they'll have to divvy up, as they deem fit the proceeds.
Right.
Okay.
But right now, yeah, an administrator need to be assigned to the estate.
Okay, and then they gotta go through the court system in order for that to be approved and processed. and-
Probate court is probably, it's less complicated than you would think it would be. I've read in some, every state has its own set of standards, but the qualifications to be an administrator really aren't that strict. I mean, you have to be alive and breathing. You have to be.
We can handle that. I
You
got that
show
one.
that you have to show that they have some kind of interest in the property whatsoever, you know what I mean, or maybe some kind of relationship. I mean, there's got to be somebody.
She was
Here,
my
let's
neighbor for
say-
25 years.
Yeah,
What's that?
My neighbor for 25 years.
Okay,
I mean, we
Okay.
have pictures of her and her son actually hanging out in the backyard during like barbecues, birthday parties, things like that.
okay.
But other than that, I mean, there's no
So what county is it in?
Middlesex.
Middlesex. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to call the probate, Middlesex County Probate, and explain that to them and say, listen, I want to apply for a letters of administration. You might be able to get it yourself.
Okay.
gotcha, yeah.
They'll
'Cause it's
walk you through it.
Been 2 years since they died and somebody's supposedly doing it, but they're not doing it.
It's-
I think they're
doesn't
gonna
seem to be
foreclose on
happening.
it, and then we'll
So I got another one.
see.
Okay.
Subject 2, we hear about this a lot, right? Have you guys done subject 2s? And if so, what was the most complicated subject 2 one you've had?
Subject to?
Yeah.
Yes.
I really don't. Well, it's only. It seems there aren't a lot of people that are really onto doing the subject to these days. I've only had one customer recently that actually pursues the subject to, and I have no problem insuring it. From a title standpoint, there's really no problem. All I'm doing is closing it, and it will be. And just like I said, instead of obtaining a payoff to that given lien, I'm just taking exception to it, and it'll be on the exceptions page. So from a title standpoint, I really have no problem. I'll insure them all day long. The guy that I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, finish.
Well, the person that I know that pursued the subject to, they seem to be very popular in probate, estate coming out of estates, because let's face it, if I'm an executor or a beneficiary and I'm selling the property and the person says, well, he asked me how, what's outstanding on the property and so on and so forth. I mean, it's certainly not my credit that's at risk. It's somebody who's deceased. And if they make a decent offer and if can I take it subject to, I'd have no problem with it.
Right.
If they fall into default and, and it gets foreclosed, well,
Right.
it's up to them and nobody's really hurt at this point.
Yeah, because I had one. Can't
Okay.
make these things up.
Gotcha.
No, the title company, we tried a new title company before we met yous, last year. And they, said that they're great doing this subject to, not a problem. But the subject to was literally it was a note from 1980 for $15,000
That expired in
that
2000.
expired in, no, well,
2000.
it supposedly expired
It
in
was due.
it was 20 years note with no interest for $15,000.
Gotcha. And it was expired.
So it was sitting there back in 1980. Same situation. The person that wrote the note passed away. She
You
used to
mean the
live 2
lender?
blocks away from us. And then her son also passed away, who was the heir to supposedly getting that $15,000 note.
Now, the person that had the note supposedly paid the note, gave them the money. They never,
Cash.
they never
filed it at the
they never
courts.
filed it as paid on due.
It was never discharged in the with the
Right.
county.
Right.
So that's still floating, and right now we're in the process with an attorney of clearing that, but the part would be subject to on something like that.
Yeah, well,
We come across some
when did the
interesting
note
ones.
originate? When was the original, what's the original date?
1980,
1980. And the
Yeah.
term for 20 years?
20
20
years,
years, no interest.
no
Okay,
interest,
so it would be expired by 2000.
right?
Right.
Or unless they made any provision that, okay, what happens after 20 years? Does it
Nope.
go away? Does
Nope.
it,
Nope.
all of a sudden does interest kick in? Unless
Nope.
there's no provision, then
Nope.
it's into 20 years and you've got, well, what are we talking about? 45 years old? I
Almost, yeah.
So what happens? What
I
happens?
mean, between you and
title
I don't
doesn't
know.
look
I don't know if
like
my underwriters would like to hear this, but I would have no problem.
So in a situation like that, what happens to what happens to a note like that on the title? What do you do? Like that? Like I've never
What
had
is
this
done,
happen.
basically, I would just, again, I wouldn't raise it as a requirement. I mean, because it's so old. I mean, at least institutional liens are 30 years. We know that. Like, any mortgage you take out with Wells Fargo, Bank of America, typically is 30 years. Now, I know some people they get modifications and they even got expanded to 40 years.
Right.
But as far as a private note from 1980 and 20-year term, and the original person, the original people on the note, I would assume both parties are now deceased.
Right.
Yeah, I would have no problem just, omitting it, per se.
Interesting. Okay, cool.
Just figured I'd ask.
So
I mean, honestly, sometimes, I mean, again, it's kind of like do you want to go and uncover, open a can of worms, and you might have somebody who who really doesn't have any authorization on the note to say,
Right.
well, oh wow, $15,000, I could really use that, and now, pay up if you want my signature in some capacity. But
right.
that's the way I see it.
Okay.
Okay.
So some of the other types of transactions, straight up sale, short sales. Have you processed short sales before?
Yes, they become kind of a dinosaur these days, but I remember, yeah, for a while, I mean, there were certain towns that would just come a giant short sale.
Okay.
New Brunswick, per se. I mean, the prices ran up. A lot of people that bought the houses and, maybe two family and never even made one single payment. And then hence you got, and the prices dropped. And of course, there was more owed on the property than what it was worth. Yeah. Many, I mean, yeah, and unless you were insuring short sales back in the day, there weren't really many transactions to go around. Yeah.
Okay.
It requires a lot of patience, and I remember there were a lot of, new quote unquote specialists coming out, short sale specialists.
Yes, yes.
Right.
We happen to know one that's pretty,
Yeah.
he's one of the best, Matt Marinoff at a real estate recovery group. I don't know if you ever heard of him, but if you need somebody, I'll refer him to you. 'Cause he's
Okay.
looking for people to work
Yeah.
with in the industry that are smart and knowledgeable. He does.
Well, again, I mean, how many short sales do you come across these days? They're not
He gets them all the time.
prevalent.
Yeah.
He's
But
still
he
got
works across the country too.
Yeah, he's
so.
nationwide.
Oh, across the country. Okay. But here in
Yeah.
New Jersey, I mean, you're not, or too many in New Jersey these days.
We've had a couple recently that we brought to them, but it's just trying to get in touch with the actual owner.
Okay,
instead of the agent or the attorney. So that's the issue. You gotta, when it comes
Yeah.
to short sale, you have to be direct to owner. You can't go through somebody in the middle because they screw up the transaction. So what about a joint venture?
okay. Joint
Have you-
venture.
Have you ever done those?
Well, you have to describe what you're talking about in joint venture. I know sometimes our terms get a little mixed up. So when you're saying, just describe your scenario of a joint venture.
Between a homeowner and an investor. So,
Or an investor and a contractor.
right, or an investor and a contractor.
So one person
Okay,
brings
and
money,
what
one
the
person brings
homeowner,
the
puts
deal.
the investor on the deed with him and then they fix up the
I
property?
guess that would be it. So like in our situation, sometimes we have homeowners and we
Yeah.
joint venture with them. And we bring in the renovation budget because they can't sell it as is, they won't get enough money. And we want to make sure that we're on the title and there's no clouding of the title or something wrong with the title. And potentially take over the deed.
Okay,
So,
Okay.
but we're joint venturing with the homeowner as a partner because they're holding the note still.
right. I understand, I mean, I understand the concept. I have to say, it hasn't come across my desktop.
Okay, it's
Well,
almost,
he's gonna regret
yeah,
knowing
so-
us then.
so it's similar to a subject too.
We do this all the time.
It's similar to a subject too, it's just that. The deal is to sell it after the renovation, so we just want it to, so it's not really a subject to, but it is a subject to.
So we
Similar
do a lot of
similar
things
process.
creatively
Creatively,
to
right.
help homeowners and different people in different situations. So.
Yeah, I mean, I have heard of, and unfortunately, there's been some lawsuits over it. Somewhat the same kind of scenario. A person was in default on their loan and they were going into foreclosure, and then you have somebody who rescues them at the end, maybe gets put on the deed, and then they do a purchase lease back or something
Right.
like that.
Yeah, that's kind of, you're not supposed to do that.
And then the person falls into default, the person lease back, they don't pay.
Yeah.
And then they go and cry, I was taken advantage of, this, that, and the other thing, and then they're suing everybody.
Okay, so
Yeah.
so you've had those where you do lease backs, but I don't recommend it. 'cause-
Yeah,
Yeah, I think the court system in New Jersey is a little too liberal.
Okay,
So I mean, people enter into contract, they say that, and basically they don't abide by what by what they signed the contract for, and then they cry, and then, they end up winning anyway. So,
yeah, it's crazy.
so and then they get it renovated, they got a whole bunch of stuff already paid and they're on their way, yeah.
yeah, I mean, I would feel more comfortable insuring a transaction like that, as long as it, if they had representation, legal representation, and at
Okay.
least the homeowner had legal
Right.
representation, and they're at least getting legal advice, and it's another layer of protection for everybody.
Okay,
Gotcha.
But
Okay.
they can't sit there and say, well, I didn't realize what I was signing, I didn't really understand the terms. Well, you had an attorney that sat next to you that explained it to you verbatim.
that's a good suggestion.
Right,
I like it. All right, so, let's see, how about some examples of other successful transactions that you've come across?
Well, honestly, some of the subject twos, it seemed I had some people come, this gentleman had tried out different title companies, and they either A, weren't willing to do it, or B, were completely unfamiliar with it. And again, that's kind of, I try to pride myself on, that's my niche. Also, I have some people that enter into a contract. I'll get a call from an investor and say, well, I have this under contract, and I'll ask if they have an end buyer yet, and they may have a very, well, I got under contract for 150 and I'm selling it for 250, and I'm like, well, that's a pretty big spread. And how do you plan on, how do you plan on doing this? Are you going to get an assignment fee, or are you going to do a double close, and he asked me to explain the difference. And I said, well, an assignment fee typically is with 10 or 15,000. I mean, it's not that big of a spread. You know, basically you're going to your end buyer and you're saying, okay, here, I have this property under contract. You could step into my shoes for 15,000. Well, in your case, you have 100,000. How do you feel about going to your buyer and saying, okay, I have it under contract for 150, but I'm selling it to you for 250. How do you feel about giving me $100,000 to step into my shoes? And a lot of them will scoff at that, right? So in that case, I would recommend doing a double close, so they're not necessarily privy to what you're buying it for, your original
Yeah.
purchases. So
So you know about double closings then? Okay.
Yeah, good.
I do, yes, yes. And I you know, over time you get a feel for what's going to work and what isn't.
Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah, it's experience, right? It comes with
Yeah.
the territory.
Right.
You got something else, or?
Yeah, only because I know we're taking up a bunch of your time. So how do you handle the communication and the coordination between everybody? Because there's more than just a title company and a buyer, right?
Yes, yes, it is, and basically, and well, if you're talking about a transaction such as a double closing or whatever, now you have a lot of balls in the air, right? So, and sometimes you're even your end buyer, and I always recommend them trying to find a cash buyer rather than them having some kind of lender, because that's another source of communication that you have to coordinate with. But basically, yeah, most of the times when I get an investor transaction, chances are the seller, if they're in distress, they don't have an attorney. So we ask for their contact information so we can coordinate with them. Obviously, the person who's submitting the contract, we have their information,
Mhm.
and also the end buyer. Now, sometimes there are realtors involved.
Right.
It's best to just be submitted, to submit all the parties involved and all their phone numbers and contact information. Now, you don't want sometimes you don't want all, one chain of communication with on your
Everybody.
email. So you
Right.
want to try to
Gotcha.
divvy it up as best you can,
Okay.
Awesome.
What
Cool.
about with self-directed IRAs? Is that considered cash or institutional type thing? I mean, what would you consider that as a part of a lender?
Transaction, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's something I honestly, I'm not an expert in. As when it comes to self-directed IRAs, or I mean, basically self-directed IRA. From what I understand, the IRA acts as a lender in
Right.
capacity,
Yep.
right? So, as far as what how it's classified, is that what you're asking? What?
Yeah, because like some people that's considered like a cash buyer because it's literally cash sitting there to buy real estate with.
Yeah, I mean,
So
it doesn't matter from a title standpoint. I mean, I could list the IRA as an insured in a lending capacity.
okay.
Uh, I mean, I thought maybe you were asking me how it's categorized tax wise, and I'm not
No,
really.
No.
no, that'll be when we get the accountant
It's
on.
they're just the lender,
I
so
was gonna say, go answer your account. I don't know.
they get named as the mortgagee
Yeah.
on the title.
Yeah.
Just like a bank would, like Wells Fargo. You know,
So, I think I'm okay with everything.
okay. So let me ask you, what benefits can you provide the members of C&J with, other than just doing straight up title? Like, what
Well,
other things can you do?
again, well, my biggest benefit is being accessible 24/7. The number that I hope you guys have, or the investors in the group have, I hope is my direct number. I try to make myself as available as possible.
Which is wonderful, but also not wonderful.
I was gonna say, gee, how many times is he laying there in bed like, oh, wait a minute, let me go grab the paperwork real quick.
The way we wake up in the morning is him taking a phone call.
Yeah.
The reason he was distracted in the beginning of this is because he had a phone call coming in. And
Yeah.
when we're on vacation, even when we were in Europe, the phone calls come in and he takes them.
So we need to help get you people who can manage your business while you're not there.
Right.
That's what we need help with.
Yeah. But again, but as far as I know that investor transactions are complex, and you always like to try to get a heads up as to what you may be getting involved with when you're submitting an offer.
Right.
I would say I have no problem offering a free record owner search on any property that you're looking at or considering making an offer. That way you at least have a snapshot title wise of the property, what may be encumbering it, and what
Yeah.
kind of hurdles you may need to address down the lines. Because one thing I also know that, like, investors like to close awfully fast, and if you're coming across something that might hold things up, you at least want a heads up.
Yeah,
Awesome,
that
awesome. Yeah,
works.
that's a great benefit because I've done that before too on a few deals where we just took a overview of the ownership snapshot to see if there's anything lingering, and that's how we found out with this one deal with this 40-year-old lien on the property after.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
We said we'll have to dig into it to find out more about what it is because it was
That's an
lingering,
interesting
and they're
one.
like, this
Yeah,
is an old thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not the only one. I know he did a quick search on one property and he came across, and the lawyer for the property didn't even find it.
Oh, yeah, it
The
was a
million.
federal lien, $1 million federal lien on the property. The attorney
Wow.
didn't know, the realtor didn't know, and I was gonna buy the property, and I'm like, so what are you doing with this lien? And they're like, what lien? I said, there's $1 million lien from the federal government on the property. And they were like, what? They're like, can you send me that? And I'm like, what? You don't know? I'm like, wow, I'm not even a title company or an attorney, and you guys didn't know. So that's why I like to, a lot of
I
times.
like
get
that, yeah.
Get that
Wow.
high overview before I even start the process to see if there's gonna
Yeah.
be a headache or a problem there to
Yeah.
predict when.
Oh, and by
you
the
know,
way, the property was only worth what, 400 maybe when it's done?
Right,
Wow.
450 at the
Yeah.
most.
so.
Wow.
What a
Okay,
nightmare.
I think that's a really, I think that's a really.
And
some-
was the what was the name of the lien under? I mean, was the lien like against John Doe, owner of?
So
It
it
was against
was,
the property, I think.
well, no, what it was it was the federal government against the woman's son who wasn't on the deed. But they
Right.
put it against the house because he's in jail for something he did. And they just wanted to make sure he wasn't gonna run. And I'm like, yeah, but he's not on a deed. How can they do that? And they did it. So there was a process that had to be done to remove that from the title. They said it wasn't a big deal. But I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, but you didn't see it. If I went to close, it would still be there,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, that's a problem that you guys didn't pick it up. And I found it just doing a quick search myself. Because I do sometimes some things when I have time. I'm like, let
a
me look
little
into it.
knowledge.
Well, how
You know,
far back? How old was the lien, if you don't mind my asking?
it was within 5 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's
was
why you
within
need
5
title
years.
insurance.
Yeah.
It was
That's
pretty
why it's
crazy.
nice that I love the fact that you offer our members at
Right,
CNJ
CNJ, that
a quick
that,
search.
yeah, that quick
So
search.
something like that comes up
Yes.
and it's like, wait
Yeah.
a minute here.
Right.
Right.
So,
Right. Wow. Okay.
So
I
it's
told
something
you.
new.
You might
What am I getting myself into?
for some good things.
Yeah, we don't usually get the standard boring stuff from time
No.
to time. It happens.
We'll hand you the boring stuff when we're done with the mess. Clean up the mess first, and then when we resell it, then you'll get the
Right.
Yeah,
quick
Right.
vanilla
Like-
view.
there's another
We
one
help
that's
each
kind of a
other
mess
out.
we're working on now, so. When we
Um,
get closer to it, we'll bring
yeah.
that to you. This other messy one, it's a probate administrator, out of state, going into foreclosure.
But so speaking of all that, how about tell the people where you do all your title work, from where to where?
Okay. As you guys know, I'm here in New Jersey. My office is situated in Homedale.
Okay.
And, as far as title insurance goes or where closings may need to take place, we cover all four corners of the state. It doesn't matter. We don't really differentiate where it is. If it's too far a drive, I have a network of mobile notaries that I work with that I can send to any resident to have anything signed at all. Also, in a non-resident capacity,
Sorry, our dog.
I hear a puppy.
Yeah. If
Yeah,
they're
in a
if you're
non-resident
not a-
capacity.
Hey, I gotta tell you, if you're not an animal lover, we don't want to know you. So,
Yeah.
All right, hold on just a second. Go kill the dog.
There are deer in the backyard. And they go crazy for the deer. No, Roxy.
we rescue everything, so trust us. That's why we like, our house is like a open door. We
Yeah.
rescued everything from let's see.
Tarantula snakes,
Tarantula snakes, lizards, squirrels,
Birds.
Oh,
birds,
wow.
parrots,
chipmunks,
chipmunk, dehydrated chipmunks,
Aw.
ferrets.
yeah.
We have 5 ferrets now. One was
Wow.
actually in a cage thrown out in the storm, so we have, if you don't love animals, we don't like you.
Good, 'cause we love
Right,
that.
so you were saying about,
From corner to corner.
and then you were gonna say
Oh, yeah,
something.
in the state of New Jersey and also in Florida.
Okay.
I've recently branched into Florida, trying to get footing there as far as with going to RIAs down that way. And
No, we're saying that way behind us.
oh yeah,
please.
I'm sorry.
But that's,
But anyway,
there's a couple of states in between. What happened? I'm just,
well, some states are you know, the closings are very similar. And, you know,
Okay.
like New York is kind of a different animal altogether than New Jersey.
Who wants to go there?
yeah, we don't want there
And
anyway.
the process is different. And rather than go after something that, you know, that I'm not really that familiar with, you know, I'd rather not make mistakes. I know Delaware is different also. So,
Okay.
yeah, I just started-
Cool. Cool.
Okay,
Okay,
well, we like Florida. We'll
Yeah,
have to introduce you
yeah,
to some
there's
friends
a lot
down
of
there.
people that go back and forth. So, as
okay,
you know, Florida, you know, has a lot of people going there every single day, and particularly a lot of people from New Jersey. So,
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
That's like one of the big things.
Okay.
Everywhere we go, we were running into Jerseyans.
yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
Only in the good states though. you know.
Yeah,
yeah,
Texas, Florida,
Yeah.
Tennessee, you know,
yeah.
Carolinas.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, okay,
Alright, well,
so,
we've taken a lot of your time.
appreciate it.
Greatly appreciate all your answers.
yep,
Yeah.
appreciate the bonus for
having
the
us.
members.
Yeah,
with
this
the
was fun.
quick search. And, you know, we'll see you at the next meeting.
Yep,
Yes.
which will be the last Wednesday of the month.
Yes. And then
Okay,
we'll,
great. We look forward to
We'll
it.
be back by then.
Yes, we will be.
Okay.
We'll be back.
right,
Yeah.
and then we'll,
Okay.
we'll just work on bringing you more transactions from us, but it's also part of the group. We'll push as many people to you as we can.
How many
Uh,
members?
no,
Everybody's gonna see this
Yeah.
here, so it's gonna go up. We're gonna go on the air, and everybody's gonna get to know you
That's right.
and
If you
know
don't
that
mind my
you know
asking that,
you know what you know what you're doing.
What's membership up to these days as far as numbers was?
Well, we have up to 10,000
Right,
on
Wow.
4
Wow.
different platforms.
right.
So the ones that come to the meetings were in the hundreds. So
Okay, yeah,
you
Yeah.
get different people at every one of the, it depends on the topics for CNJ REIGs. So
Right,
some of the really good topics that you need in your investing world, people slack getting off their tushy to come to ask the questions.
yeah, like in a real estate attorney.
Yeah, like
That's
we're
another-
giving you free advice from a title company. You need to
Right.
know these things. The insurance company, you need to know these things.
right.
So it depends.
Well,
but
I think a
we
lot
have-
of people, in general, like particularly new people, or even people that have been around for a while, they get into what's the term? Analysis paralysis?
Yes,
Right.
yes,
Yeah.
that's why we're,
Yeah.
Paralysis by analysis, if you want to put it that way. Yeah.
yeah,
So,
we're working on
yeah.
that this year by having more workshops to get people to actually take action over top of just sitting there and.
And not be
listening.
afraid. So,
Not be afraid,
and add people like you guys to the team. That's
exactly.
what you need, your team.
Experienced, knowledgeable people that can help them get through a process where they might think they're stuck or they're afraid.
Yep.
Because of something that comes up, that's really not as scary as they think, you know,
And can be taken care of. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
exactly.
So,
Awesome.
right.
All right, well, we
Greatly
appreciate your
appreciate
time.
it.
We'll see you at the next meeting
We
and
will
we'll
see
let
you
you know
then.
when we get this up.
All
Make
right,
sure
take
if
care.
you have
Thanks.
questions, want to know their stuff, we're gonna put their links below when it
Yes.
goes up. So everybody can get in contact with yous and we'll see yous
Great.
on the flip
Bye,
side.
guys.
All
Enjoy
right,
your day.
bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.